I'm here with my friend Richard Scott. Hello, Richard.
Andy, good to be here again.
Yes, we discuss all things medical, which is brilliant. Let's just go straight to whatever you've brought for this evening, I think.
Well, thank you. Yes, I mean we had things like an apple a day, keeps the doctor away, and that's medical. But sometimes I can't find anything of interest medically, so I'm not going to bring something that's not of interest. But I found one this week on how curiosity, how remaining curious, boosts the midlife brain. So I thought that would be of interest. So there we are. Should we go for it?
I think we just go dive straight into it.
Straight in. And I think this will be an interest to both Andy and me. He's a little bit lower in the age pecking order than I am. He's midlife. I'm a little bit older than that. But either way, how curiosity should boost our brain. So there's an article from a neuroscientist. So that's good. Someone who's interested in brains, clearly. And she said this: traditionally, we assume as we grow older that our world shrinks. As we become physically less able, we become mentally less able. But a new study, and this is what I like when I read this, there's been a new study from the University of California, has revealed that one aspect of our brains can increase with time, and that's curiosity. And she said this is important. It's not general curiosity, the stuff you find in my grandchildren, wide-eyed when they suddenly come across something new. No, general curiosity declines with age, but curiosity in specific topics can continue to grow after middle age if we allow it. So that's got my interest. And she said this: in midlife, people are focused on careers, families, with less time to explore personal interests. Makes sense. But in this new study, they studied 1,200 participants from the ages of 20, that's hardly midlife, but from 20 to 84, okay? And they were quizzed about their levels of curiosity. And they found that as responsibilities ease in later life, although that's a discussable point, but as responsibilities ease, we often rediscover the joy of learning for its own sake. And this is very good news for our cognitive health, because, and this is the important thing, we need to be self-motivated to learn rather than having it foisted on us. So we've all been through school, some of us through college, or maybe bosses at work. You have to learn this, you have to do this. That's not what we're talking about. This is self-motivated learning. And it has 5 good effects on our brains. So I'm going to give you a bit of science, and then we're going to look at the how. So number 1, it increases our cognitive reserve. What's that, I hear you say? Well, as we get older, we have an age-related decline in function. So our cognitive reserve declines. But, excuse me, we can increase our cognitive reserve through remaining curious. And we're going to look at how in a moment. That's number 1. Cognitive reserve can go up, not just down. Number 2, it increases neuroplasticity. What's that? Well, the brain, and we're learning more and more about this, can form connections plastically, not just sort of fixed as in younger age. And these are connections between the brain cells. We can increase the neuroplasticity rather than just see it go down, which is, of course, what ultimately leads to cognitive degeneration, things like Alzheimer's disease. So the cognitive reserve can go up. The neuroplasticity can go up, not just down. That's good. It engages, number 3, the prefrontal cortex. That's the bit at the beginning of the front of our brains, essential for reasoning, and again, shrinks in age-related brain illness. So instead of it shrinking, we can engage it, we can stimulate it to increase. It increases dopamine, a wonderful neurotransmitter we've talked about before. And number 5, here's a good one for Andy: it increases creativity and even patience. Well, we'll take creativity and we'll certainly take patience, because that can go down through frustration as we get older. I see that a lot in older people. So here, this is the good news. Curiosity, through studies, and this is a neuroscientist talking, can make our brains, continue to develop rather than sort of inevitably shrink over time. And she has not only 5 good things, but 6 tips. And this is what we're going to bring tonight, Andy, and I'm sure you'll be looking at this. So this is the how. That's the rather marvellous science, and how wonderful it would be if our brains can improve rather than inevitably decline. But what about the how? How do we do it? No, well, number 1, and this is based on what 1,200 people have said. Number 1, don't just read a book. Reading a book is good. Join a book club. Why? Well, it's not any more fun, but you're surrounding yourself with similarly curious people. They will inevitably have a different way of looking at the world to yourself, and this will widen your horizon. So surround yourself with others who are curious. A book club just being an example. Number 2, think about what made you tick as a child. How often do we let go of childhood passions? So here's just a couple of examples. She uses kite flying, tap dancing. You've got some skills and interest. So progress, if you take them up again, progress is going to be easy. You can already do this stuff, even if there's been a big gap. Returning to a childhood passion is a great way, excuse my cough, of stimulating curiosity. Number 3, pursue what you can progress at. Now, what does that mean? Well, we need to see progress to keep it going. There was a research in a journal called The Trends in Cognitive Sciences last year, 2024, found that curiosity, to be sustained, individuals need to see improvements. If we're banging our head against a brick wall, we're not going to see it continuing. We need to see that we're getting better. And they talk about, this is rather nice, starting at a Goldilocks level. Now, what are Goldilocks like? Well, she didn't like the porridge too hot, didn't like the porridge too cold. Go for somewhere in the middle. Don't go for something that's just too easy to do. You'll lose interest. And don't do something that's too hard. You'll give up. So go for something that's in the middle. Maybe it's going to challenge you. It might be beginning to learn a new language. I've come across various people who do that as they get older. Nothing too hard. Don't maybe start off with Mandarin. Spanish is easier. Just an example. So pursue something you can progress at. Number 4, set yourself a gentle goal. Have a target. You need a goal. It might be evening classes. It might be have a grade on a musical instrument. In a sense, you're making a contract with yourself. But these steps need to be with yourself, not something else, not deadlines from somebody else. They need to be self-driven. And the question to ask yourself is, am I making progress? You may not, you may not turn a footballer from a 3-year-old to David Beckham. That may not be possible. But you're comparing yourself, am I at 3-year-old football level or 4-year-old or 5-year-old? Oh, that's good. I'm making progress. Same with the musical instrument. Number 5, look for sparks to start you off. Now, that's a tough one. I'm going to have to get a glass of water in a minute. How do you decide what to do? Does it have to be a long-standing interest, something you did as a kid? Not necessarily. And this is an interesting one. She said, maybe you overhear a throwaway comment about ancient Greece. Oh, that's exciting. What's all that about? And you end up dialing down into it, suddenly discover you've got interest in a Greek philosopher. That's just one particular idea. Because a study, again from the University of California in 2014, said that participants were more likely to recall a fact an hour later, if they'd heard something an hour previously, if they were curious about it. If you're curious about something you hear, maybe jot it down, look it up, resolve to look, whatever it's about. It might be bricklaying, it might be Greek philosophy, whatever. I'd love to do wood turning. And then go for it. And number 6, very important, be discerning. This is do the work yourself. Don't just swipe on social media, hundreds or thousands of things that might be of interest. That's going to get you nowhere. We're not into superficiality here. We're interested in finding one thing, dial down and just dig deeper, and you'll find something. Maybe you think, I'd really like to do something, or you hear a podcast, think that's really got my interest going. I want to know more about that. Example, I was asked to go to a Mozart's Requiem on Saturday night to hear my daughter and my sister-in-law sing. So I went, 200 in the choir, amazing, astonishing orchestra in Canterbury Cathedral, so a major event. But it got me thinking, why did Mozart write this? So I looked it up. Oh my goodness, he wrote the Requiem at 35 when he is dying. He was semi-conscious when he was dying. Oh my goodness. Then Heather said, well, why don't we learn a bit more about Mozart? So we just looked at a couple of teleprograms on his life. Astonishing. You might think, oh, he's a prodigy. He writes symphonies at the age of 8, which he did, because that's what you do in your prodigy. Oh, no. What you do depends on your environment. He had all sorts of problems at home, all sorts of difficulties getting past the aristocracy, who were much less talented than him, but had the power and the money. His life was really interesting. So I've got a little bit into Mozart. Not that I'm a classical pianist or anything like that. I'm not even that interested in classical piano. But my goodness, that got me interested because I've dialed down into it. So some good advice. It might be something you've done in the past. It might be something new. Set yourself some gentle targets. Go easy on yourself, but don't give up too easily. and above all, enjoy moving forwards. So there we go. Curiosity didn't kill the cat. Curiosity improves our brains. And actually, as they've done, looked at people from 20 to 84, of course it can apply to the young as well. But I think it becomes more important as we get older. We can do something about cognitive decline. And one thing to do is to get interested in something and go for it. There we are. Thought for the day.
There's a lot of thought in that. I was thinking particularly about older folk. That I suppose the stereotype is you get older, you get a bit grumpier, you get a bit of pain, less sleep. You're up in the middle of the night, and all that kind of stuff that happens. And then you sort of the world feels like it's shrinking. But of course, we can do stuff to prevent it, which is exactly what this is talking about. But I think there's something in the stereotype of truth.
I think that's absolutely right. And as Christians, we know that Paul calls us, doesn't he, to run the race. We should be moving forwards as Christians, older Christians, not least in church. Don't just rely on the young to do stuff. Wonderful when they do. We have roles to play because of our experience, but also not just relying on the past, but okay, let's stretch ourselves. Let's keep reading those articles. Let's keep reading the Bible. Let's say, yes, I'll speak in church. I'll sing. Why not? Let's discover something that maybe we've done before or we haven't, but we have something to offer, but we need to push ourselves a bit.
I think the scripture that comes to mind, his mercies are new every morning, and to renew your mind every day, which two separate scriptures. But it just reminds me of the fact that actually every day is a new opportunity, and we either look at the day and think, can't be bothered because yesterday was rubbish, so tomorrow will be rubbish as well, or, which isn't a very good way, or we can think, well, today is a new day, it's a new opportunity, and regardless of what happened yesterday, now I have more possibilities yet again, and to set off. But in a sense, this is kind of a detailed version of that.
Yeah. And I read a thing just this week. In fact, you brought it to mind by saying that the mercies being new every morning from Lamentations 3. Somebody said, here's a very useful prayer, which she has used fantastically well. And she starts off the day by saying, Lord, what are you going to teach me today? That's her prayer. I'm ready. I'm open for it. And she's saying, I'm expecting you to teach me something today. It may be scriptural. It doesn't have to be. But Lord, teach me something today, please, because I want to learn. How very good is that? And there's a thing which Nicky Gumbel used to say on the Alpha course from somewhere like Psalm 57, approximately. And he was, it's just got out of my mind. It'll come back. But it was along those lines of that's right. He wakens me morning by morning with an open ear. Words to that effect. He awakens my ear morning by morning. In other words, my ear is open, waiting for him to teach me something. I'm a receptacle. Lord, what are you teaching me today? So there we are. Well, sometimes we think on the spot and don't always get it smoothly right. So apologies to the listeners there, but it's because we're batting things off against each other, aren't we, Andy? And these are the things that we read. Think that's a really important scripture, and it's taught me something. Lord, what are you going to teach me today? Thank you. I'm ready.
It's true.
In my mind.
It's important that the one that actually really stuck out for me from all those six, pursuing what you can progress at. Imagine the 8-year-old child, they see the NASA rocket going off into space. I'm going to be an astronaut. It's a classic 8-year-old fantasy in a sense. But actually, there is a possibility of that. It's very, very unlikely, but there is a possibility if they pursue that. However, if you're 80 and you see that same rocket, it's probably much less likely if you're going to become an astronaut, unless you watch a film where that happened. But it's not the common thing. So I think it is important to be realistic. But if we're not careful, that realism squashes the dream. I loved seeing an article about somebody who'd flown Spitfires. I think it was as a woman who'd moved the Spitfires around for the RAF. And then she got into a Spitfire as a much older lady, the last 10 years or something. And it was just the joy as she was back in the aircraft that she felt at home. And it rekindled the joy that she had in the 1940s. Here we are in like 2010 or 15 or whenever it was, I don't remember. But it's rekindled and the joy on her face. I only watched a little article about it on the news, but I thought, I can feel her joy. I have no idea anything about it other than the fact she's just been in a Spitfire, and look at the joy as a memory was rekindled for her from some 60, 70 years hence.
That's a lovely story. But even going back to your astronaut, someone is 80 years, they're not going to be an astronaut. But perhaps they think, "Do you know, those planets, they're really interesting. I'm going to do a bit of astronomy. I'm going to
Hmm.
dial down." And of course, almost, certainly every month in the newspaper, "Oh, look, there's a new planet being discovered," or, "Oh, there might be life out there. They found some chemicals." And even if I think that's extremely unlikely, it's still very interesting. And you can certainly look into astronomy and think, "Wow, there's so much to learn," without going and becoming an astronaut. So yes, God uses what we have, I think, and He encourages us. But let's not close our minds to it. And this study is saying
It's
there's
good.
great advantages. Go for it.
Here's a thought for you. I wonder what you think of this. I remember hearing a guy in a church one time talking about his life. He was, I guess, 70s or something like that. He was definitely post retirement, but he was talking about his working life. He was talking about the importance of providing for his family, and that was kind of his focus. And he said, I did this job for 40 years and I hated every second of it. I hated the work. It was really boring. It was terrible. But I did it because I had to do it. And I think he was trying to generate a sense of pride of what he'd done. And all I could think was, why did you do a job you hated for 40 years? Because as much as you want to provide for your family, doing something you hate day in, day out, yes, okay, we're going to go through, every one of us goes through a phase, just get the job done. Fine, it's not pretty. Unblocking a toilet, unblocking a drain. It just got to be done. But if you do it for 40 years and you hate it, that's got to start to eat away at your confidence, your joy, your outlook on life.
And also, it says, doesn't it, biblically, that God gives us the desires of our heart, and of course, He implants those desires in the first place, gives us the gifts to make them happen. A bit like you do in this radio station. You were a trucker,
Yeah.
but I bet this is more you than probably trucking was in a sense. And if so, maybe if you don't know what you're meant to be doing, that's one of the listeners. Well, ask God, make reveal, and also talk to people, talk to wise people. They can look at our gifts and say,
Mm.
"Look, have you thought about this and that?" And maybe a little light bulb will go off in your head. Oh my goodness! And so, yes, don't waste time. I think that's what it's also saying. And don't waste time at the end of time thinking, "Well, I can't do anything. I'm old. That's it." No, be curious about things and watch where it goes.
Which circles back to something that you spoke of last week when you were speaking to somebody who was, well, I'm in pain, they're struggling with their memory. Look at all these things I can't do. And you kind of twisted that conversation back to a even keel, kind of bad English, yeah, but if you can't do that, what can you do? And there is so much we can do. And it really grates to me when people say, oh, well, they're a bit older, but at least they can pray. I mean, what an utterly disgusting thing to say. Well, yes, they can, but they can do so much more than that. But why do we put people in little teeny tiny boxes of limitations based on our own perception, I guess?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Well, I think this you can. Anyone says that, how can I encourage someone? Well, encourage them by this article. Curiosity boosts the midlife brain. That's the headline, and it's the takeaway point. Absolutely.
I mean, if you become a Christian, it's curiosity, isn't it? At one level, yes, we believe that God is calling us, absolutely, and He's part of that experience. But at the same time, you look at a lot of the characters in the Bible, like doubting Thomas. I see a curious Thomas as well, which is why I think personally he doubted because he's thinking, well, how does that work? That's not right. Is that true? And I think there's a curiosity underpinning his doubt.
And I think Jesus rewarded him. He could have just thought, "Well, Thomas, you've missed your opportunity. Such is life." No, he came back a week later and said, "Thomas, actually, here I am. Let's put those doubts away, and I'm here for you." So I
Let's
think
just
you're absolutely right.
let's just finish with this sixth point then. Be discerning, because in the world today, I mean, partly why I love these conversations with you and also Lionel Jackson is there's a lot of truth that is not true. If I can't put it another way, and it's honestly, there's an awful lot of truth which is just bonkers, mad rubbish, and that's why I like these conversations with you and Arnold Jackson, who kind of unpick and shine a light on the real truth behind the nonsense that we think is true. And I think that actually is quite good English for what I'm trying to say. But that's why this is important, because we see something and we see something of it. We see a piece of it. And if we're not careful, we take this little piece of knowledge. I talk to you every week. I'm not a doctor. I'm not medically trained. I'm not going to advise anybody. I could take a piece of what you've said and share it with somebody else, but I'm not going to suddenly start saying, here's a prescription. This is what you need to do. I'm not stupid, but I have also gleaned little bits of information, and the same with Arnold Jackson, about central health. I learn little bits and pieces, which is fascinating to me, which is why I love these conversations. But also, I'm not going to take that and say, oh, off you go. I've spoken to a doctor. Therefore, I know, because I'm not an idiot.
And one of the things I love about this, and I'm very grateful for you allowing me to be on this show, because it encourages me to study things in a bit more depth than I would do. I might have read this article very quickly and swept from it and forgotten almost all of it. But because I've actually sort of written stuff down and thought about it, and to discover once again that there's more and more that we're learning about the brain, that the brain isn't a fixed entity, the brain can develop further even when we're old. It is more plastic than we thought. There's more reserve than we might have imagined. This is really encouraging, just on a pure scientific and biological and medical level. And of course, when you add in the Christianity as well, thinking, well, this is this is how God has designed us. How marvelous! He doesn't want us to shut down when we get old. He wants us to use what we've got, and He'll help us develop it. We've got our role to play. He's not just going to do it all for us. Do some studying, dial down in a particular area, use your brain essentially. But how marvelous that he'll do all these things and even improve our creativity and even our patience, even if we're old. How marvelous that he'll do that. We just need to work with him. And so thank you that, as ever, science discovers what God has revealed to us and is revealing to us increasingly, and it's marvelous.
I often think, you see the latest invention. I don't know. James Dyson creates the Dyson Hoover. It's a revolution. We've had this Hoover thing that was created, and it's a bag, and the air gets sucked through, and it sucks the dirt. And then along came James Dyson, and he said, "Do you know what? That's rubbish. Let's do it this way." And it's an amazing invention. Or perhaps the internet, or the internal combustion engine, or the battery-powered car. These are amazing. But that's not actually a new thing. But these are amazing inventions. But they're only there because they're actually curious and they're trying. The humble light bulb, it didn't just mysteriously appear in Edison's hand followed by an estimated bill. He actually had to work out how to create this thing through curiosity.
I went to see the film on Edison, and also I read about him. 10,000 failures before he got it right with the light bulb. He didn't give up. 10,000 failures, but what a result! What an absolute! All around the world there are light bulbs. It's amazing because of Edison not giving up. Okay, somebody else may well have discovered it soon after. Fair enough, but he didn't give up. He was curious, and yeah, it's amazing. We may never be an Edison, most of us. That's true. We're not that brilliant, but we can achieve things by not giving up and run the race right to the end, as Paul said.
Let me prove your hypothesis of this thing. I was very tired when I started this after not a great sleep for whatever reason, I don't know. And I was yawning quite a bit. It was really frustrating. I like talking to you, and I know it's a mutual thing, but I got quite enlightened. What's the word? Enthusiastic as we went through, and energized because it's exciting and it's interesting. I'm learning something and I'm hearing it's great. But that's exactly the point and the proof of go to a book club, surround yourself with people who don't necessarily think like you, but you can stimulate, be discerning. I think I trust you quite a lot. Pursue what you can progress at. Well, this is interesting. It's fascinating. But this is the point. When you start to allow curiosity and me asking questions further, it's making me feel more alert. My yawning has now gone because I'm now more alert because it's fascinating and interesting, which is exactly the point of everything you've just spent the last 20 minutes talking about.
Well, that's good. At least one listener.
Would have been worse if I started yawning more. That would not help the hypothesis. But now I'm more energized because it's interesting and it's fascinating. And that's what God designs us to be, not just sponges. Yes, there's an element of learning and absorbing, but there's also the doing part and curiosity. And you think about the toddler, we lose that, don't we? The toddler, they've got a pen, they chew it, stick it in their ear, they stick it under the toes. It's a fascinating device. Whereas now I'm just thinking it's running out of ink, which is a bit boring, but true.
Very good. That's a nice analogy.
Stop looking at the ink level and start working out what you can do with your pen. Right, Richard, thank you. That was good. If you've got any questions or feedback or comments on what he's just talked about, you can get in touch with us here. hello@pure247radio.org. Email address is hello@pure247radio.org. If you've seen something in the news you're thinking, is that really true? We'll put it to Richard for you. You can email that to us and we'll put it for you to him. Thank you, my friend.
Well, pleasure, and sorry about the coughing.
No, it's fine. I was struggling. Hay fever. I'm just going to blame it on hay fever. We've got rapeseed, which is stunning and beautiful, and I love it. And my body's not quite so keen as much as my eyes.
It is a shocker for hay fever. There's no doubt.
Yeah, and we've got fields literally as far as the eye can see of that. So it's gorgeous. My nose and eyes are not quite so keen, but hey, it's fine. Richard, thank you.
Thanks, Andy.